phantom moves, and why did we have to take that knight with the queen? Greetings to my fellow peace blunderers, and yes, I am back with the hacks, and it's great to be back. I just returned from a big tournament that I played a couple of days ago in Krakow, but today is not about that. Kinda. Today is about us talking on a massive problem that a lot of people struggle with on many levels, really, especially those who don't consider endgames to be their strongest suit. And as an introduction to this problem, I have manufactured this position that you're seeing right now on your screen. Now, it looks a little bit sus, looks a little bit ridiculous, but come on, anything can happen on the board, so give me a break. And this position is basically a draw, right? Temporarily, yes, black is a pawn up, but this e4 pawn is under a tremendous amount of pressure. It's going to get captured very soon, and it's going to be 2 against 2. It's going to be raised to promotion, where the opponents are going to be equally matched, most likely, if they play correctly. Now, what happens in a lot of games, especially like beginner to intermediate level, and I'm sure a lot of you guys watching will be able to relate to that, is that sometimes we just go into this adrenaline rush where we just keep exchanging pieces without looking into the consequences. So, for example, white to move, and of course we see that the e4 pawn has got 4 attackers and only 3 defenders. So we're like, so we're bloodthirsty. We just take, and we just basically ruin the position because this is no longer a draw. This is a win for black after a4. We just liquidated through our own actions. It is our own fault. We just liquidated to an absolutely losing endgame for no reason whatsoever. And again, I am pretty sure that a lot of you guys will recognize yourself doing this, maybe not regularly, but at least from time to time. We just keep exchanging pieces on one single square. It's literally just 6 pieces flying off the board in an instant, like so. And when the dust settles, a4, and you realize, bloody hell, what have I done? What have I done? Like, why? Why? By the way, just as a side note, if you are curious as to why exactly white is losing here, it's actually very simple. We can say e5, and okay, it looks like the pawns are about to promote at the same time. So it's gonna be like, I don't know, a3, e6, a2, e7, a1 queens, and e8 queens. And this is actually a draw indeed, but this is not what needs to happen for black to win after a4, e5. The problem is not the promotion. The problem is black can actually catch that pawn. It's going to capture that pawn, and white king is too far away. For example, e6, and we're just close enough to catch it, and white king even gaining a tempo with a promotion. They just can't catch up to it with queen and win. So in a way, that's also a 3-second tip for you. Always watch out for these situations where it's not about being quick enough to promote, it's about stopping the pawn first and then promoting. Now, okay, the bottom line coming from this introduction is that be very careful when liquidating to an endgame and just exchanging pieces off in an instance. Be very careful when doing so, because especially when you liquidate to a completely peaceless, is that a word, peaceless? Endgame, where there's just kings and pawns, it can really hurt you. And with that thought, let's actually go into our main position, which is this one. This one isn't manufactured by my genius mind. This one is actually real. This one is the position that I had in the tournament a couple of days ago. I was playing as the white pieces, and this was a terribly painful game on many levels. And I'm not going to go into all the reasons why it was so painful. I'm just going to show you a teeny little bit of glimpse of what happened. Also, guys, please let me know in the comments below if you want me to cover my full games from that tournament, because I'm a little bit undecided as to whether I want to do that. I used to do some coverage for the World Chess Championship match, you know, when Dane kicked Nepo's ass, but the videos were not doing very well. So, you know, I sort of holding them back. If there is interest in that, and I will try to make them, you know, short and very instructive, please let me know. Anyway, this position, just like the first one, is very drawn. At first glance, it may seem like white has something going on with the queen side majority here, 2-1, but in reality, it's very difficult to push these pawns in an attempt to create a passer to promote and win, because we've got this light squared bishop, which is acting more of a defensive piece than an attacking piece, really. Like c5, you can't push because it's very much controlled, and it's a dark square as well. So yeah, it's very difficult. The light squared bishop isn't helping, and pushing b5 first doesn't make any sense. Like, it completely stops c5 if b5 is ever removed. At the same time, forget about this advantage. Black will also be very much willing to push the e pawn, right? Which is actually going to happen with e5. It was black to move, by the way. And, basically this position is a draw. The threats that both sides are trying to create are going to eventually cancel each other out. However, as you know, there are draws that are easy, almost automatic, and there are draws that are still draws, but they require very, very good technique. Now, this position falls, I'd say, somewhere in the middle between the two, so medium difficulty. Sensible moves, just plain sensible moves, will go a long way here and will stop you from losing the game. The problem with these positions can sometimes be that even seemingly sensible moves are just not sensible at all. So you've got to be extra cautious, as I've said a number of times this video already. After e5, because e6 to e5 happened, the d5 square was liberated, and I can place my bishop there, so I did that. And bishop d5 is a decent move, nothing wrong with it. The position's still draw. Of course, the immediate threat is f7, and the threat is almost unstoppable. There is only one move that stops it, and it is knight takes bishop on 5. Just take the piece. And this is where we come to this point, the crucial point, where we talk about exchange, losing. Not so many exchanges this time, but you get the gist. We can recapture here with the pawn or with the queen, right? And what happened in the game, what I did, unspeakable, and exactly is the problem that we're talking here, I took with the queen. And that's awful. That's awful. So take 6, and this is a winning endgame for black. Now, you may be looking at this and be like, well, how do you know that this is a winning endgame? Like, I am sitting and watching this video, I am like 1000, and to me this isn't obvious at all. To what I say, yes, it's never, ever, ever obvious. Ever obvious. Every endgame, unless it's a very by-the-book endgame, needs precise calculation. And I'm sorry, this is as good as it gets. You need to calculate, right? You need to calculate before you make this decision of capturing the knight with the queen or with the pawn. You need to see all the way through, after all of this happens, whether it's good enough or not. Because, if you commit to a decision that is inherently losing and there is nothing you can do about it, then, it sucks. Don't do that. But, okay, let's not be too harsh there for a second. Let's just stop and chill and try and give another perspective. Let's say it's a Blitz online game. We have only 30 seconds left on your clock, and you're not at that level yet where you can calculate all the way through this endgame in the limited amount of time, right? If we try to disregard the calculation, which is the only, I remind you, only surefire way of figuring out whether an endgame is good or not, if we throw that away, whenever you have an isolated pawn in king and pawn endgames, just kings and pawns left, you have to be very, very cautious, like doubly, triply cautious. And this is exactly the case. We have this isolated d5 pawn, which, even if we do not calculate, we must instantly recognize, just looking at this without any calculation, there is a very good chance, not 100% chance, but there is a very good chance this endgame is losing for us because of that pawn. It's a passed pawn, but it's very stoppable. If you know the square rule, or if you just bother to calculate a couple of moves, the king is very easily catching the pawn, right? So although it's a passed pawn, it doesn't really matter, at least yet. So an isolated pawn is always a bell in your head that maybe you shouldn't go for it. Maybe just think about it for a second. Now, again, not a surefire way, better to calculate, but this is the first sign of a bad situation. And what are some other first signs of a bad situation? Again, without calculating, just scanning it visually at first glance. Well, we've seen one already in this position as well, where we had this a4 pawn, which was very close to queening. When we have pawns so far advanced, it immediately tips us off, usually when they're so close. And we should be, again, very, very cautious going into these positions. Also, other structural weaknesses, like, of course, having an isolated pawn is one of them. There are also others like double pawns, triple pawns, etc., etc., etc. But then again, this is not a guaranteed way of telling whether an endgame is winning or not. We need to calculate. And this endgame is winning for black, like I said, and it can be winning in many, many, many scenarios. And there are too many variations to go into. But let's say I give you one of them, which you should try and calculate before, like I said, you commit to this move of takes with queen. The problem is after king f6, king f3, king e7, king e4, king d6, we arrive in a situation where this pawn is being our demise. Like I said, isolated pawn, very weak. And black is actually able to get us into Zugzwang in a position where we don't have any good moves, and this pawn is about to fall, and likely this pawn is about to queen, or any other pawn depending on the position. And the glaring problem with this position specifically is the f5 check push. If f5 check ever happens, then our king is just royally screwed, pardon the pun. And we are just forced back after that check, and the pawn falls, and we're just losing and crying, right? We can try to delay the pain with a move like g4, trying to fight for the f5 square, but black can just very easily buy some time for themselves, and it is very good skill to have in the endgame, moving without moving, buying time. f6, very good move. We can try and do the same with h4, but h5 challenging our g-pawn is just forcing us into a decision we do not want to make. If we take that pawn, f5 check. If we don't take that pawn, if we advance, guess what? f5 check. We're just out of moves. We're out of moves. And why did we have to take that knight with the queen? This is the question we are asking ourselves. Now, looking at this endgame and just losing the game. Now, again, I get it. None of this is straightforward, all right? If you are a 1,000 rated player, and it looks like I'm just being dismissive of 1,000 rated players. I'm not. This is exactly why I'm doing this, because I want to like help you guys tonight. I love you all, like kiss and hug. If you're a 1,000 rated player, this endgame that I just showed you is unlikely to go this way. Chances are you're going to be making mistakes and inaccuracies. After all, playing moves like h5, and then instead, of just retaking and actually handing the game to white now after b5, and now suddenly black is out of moves. It's difficult, right? It's difficult. I don't think that guys will see that at that rating or even beyond that. But this is the thing. This is exactly what you guys need to do to get your endgames at least to another level. Calculation. I'm sorry, it doesn't get easier. And there is no hack. You've got to calculate. Endgames need to be played like machines, right? Not played like machines, but we play endgames like machines. And to finish our lesson off, if we go back to the initial position where all the bad choices were made, where we took the knight with the queen and we paid for it, if we take with the pawn instead, which is the drawing move, yes, black does take the b4 pawn and is temporarily up a pawn. And this is exactly this type of situation where when you see that, I take with a pawn, black takes my pawn, you may be a little bit scared, right? This what got me scared myself, right? So I thought, between pawn and queen, and I thought taking with a queen at least doesn't lose me a pawn, so I took with a queen. But, what you need to understand is, takes, this pawn is now very strong. And after queen c6, remember that this is a draw, we cannot win. It's just that this pawn that we got as a result is strong enough so that black will try to stop it, and black will have to concede that extra pawn sometime in the future. I know, again, this is not easy, but understanding material imbalances closer to the endgame is absolutely crucial. Sometimes when we try to preserve material, we actually end up making the worst decision possible. Case in point, this position. And, for example, just as a last small point, queen c5, trying to like create some tension and trying to maybe move the pawn along at some point. Funnily enough, you know, let's say we play a nothing move for white, I don't know, king g1. Now, of course, if black decides to trade queens, it's a losing position for black. But it's a very easy example because, you know, we can clearly see that the pawn is very far advanced. We don't even need to calculate that much. Just another small example of how yet another exchange completely ruins the position for us. This is a draw, and now with queens off, obviously this is a win for white. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comments below if you recognized yourself in this video, and if you just so happens to find it useful, please like and subscribe. Follow my streams on YouTube. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. We're always having lots of fun. Join our Discord, all that good stuff. And I'm going to talk to you very soon, my favorite unintentional gambiteers. Love you all. See ya in the next one.